sister.
I'm grabbing my kids.
And Robin has the kids downstairs.
Are you ready, Abby? Ready, boys? My kiddo. Hi, Sebastian.
If you have your Bibles, let's turn over to Psalms 18. We're going to read verse 6 to begin with. I'm going to share about desperation today, okay? Psalms 18 verse 6. It says, I cried to the Lord in my distress, and I cried to my God for help. From his temple he heard my voice, and my cry reached his ears. I cried to the Lord in my distress. So I'd like to begin with just asking a question. What does desperation mean to you? I would imagine probably every one of us have had at times points of desperation, right? Those times when you kind of feel a little bit overwhelmed, times that you feel hopeless, times you wonder if things are actually going to get better. Desperation, if you went to Webster, it would be defined as an extreme need or urgency, usually related to, a difficult or a desperate situation, wanting to survive that thing, feeling maybe alone or discouraged, disconnected, maybe in the middle of that, willing on your part to even take some risks to kind of change the situation. Maybe it's relationships that feel toxic, or addictions that you just can't seem to break free from that dominate, the compulsions in your life, procrastinations, negative behavior, physical conditions, feeling overwhelmed. There's some really interesting truths, nuggets when it comes to this word desperation. Desperation makes a person stop. Desperation makes a person readjust. So it's a stop, it's a readjust, and it's in the now moment. Without desperation, nothing would ever change in our life. And there's a great truth in that. A calling in your life would never be realized or answered. Some of the greatest callings that I have read in history have been men and women who felt the desperation of the moment as they cried out for their generation. And it may feel like at times in the desperation that God is simply in a disconnect. You ever felt that? I have. I'm in the middle of this moment where I feel very desperate, and it's like the heavens maybe feel like they're made of brass and I'm not hearing from God. But I want you to know he never turns away. It may seem he is absent, but he never turns away from those who are feeling desperate. God will allow you to feel desperate. He will. Because desperation is a catalyst for change. And sometimes that's exactly what we need. God looks at us and he says, something needs to change. I had a conversation last night with an individual who was going through a physical crisis in their life. And you could say, well, and they've been to the doctor more than once. I mean, they've ran the tests. I thought about it, and part of my word back to this individual, because I know about them. You ever hear somebody say they're an anal German or something like that, We have a few of them in our family, and what it means is it's like everything has got to be perfect. You ever been around a perfectionist? Huh? It's like, I was kind of me growing up in a lot of ways. Some of it was birthed out of compliments I'd received. I kept my vehicle like,
Oh, you did.
it was, you could have ate off the grill, kind of a thing. And it's like, my grandfather would tell me, because he was the old anal German, every time he took a shower, he wiped the shower. Couldn't be no water spots, you know what I mean? No water spots. And you would never wear your shoes in the house. And they had kind of a white colored carpet. It wasn't a white, kind of a cream, I guess. But you couldn't walk on it with bare feet, because, bare feet have grease. And you're going to take, and pretty soon that carpet, you're going to be able to see the little path to wherever somebody went. And so you always had to wear socks. So his compliment was like, yeah, okay, man, I got Grandpa's seal of approval. And then I met Robin, and Robin was kind of just totally the different kind of person. You know what I mean? The house was clean, but it didn't have to always, you know what I mean? I'd go and open the freezer and get the ice cream, and there'd be a little finger mark in there where she got her a taste. And it'd be like, man, we don't do that in my home, you know what I mean, kind of thing. And what she was good for me. She kind of chilled me out a little bit. And so this individual, it's like, I believe with all of my heart, it's stress in their life. And it's because they're one of the anal German kind of personality type people. It's like everything. It's the home has got to be perfect. The grass has got to be perfect. The car has got to be perfect. It's like the work has got to be perfect. The ministry has got to be perfect. The daughter's got to be perfect. The wife has got to be perfect. At times, he struggled a little acid reflux. Now struggling with some other things. And it's like, you just need to learn to enjoy life a little bit. Some things aren't important. They're just not important. And so he's feeling really desperate, but desperateness is the catalyst for change. The word actually comes from two words, D and S-P-E-S, and it means lack of hope. It's the raw material. Desperation is the raw material for change. And so I want to share several little quick stories out of the Bible about people who became absolutely desperate, and in their middle of their desperateness, God met the need in their life. Let's go first of all to Mark 5, and we're going to read verses 25 through 34. Mark 5, verses 25 through 34. And you'll recognize the story as soon as we share it. So it says, a woman here, in verse 25 of chapter 5 of Mark, a woman suffering from bleeding for 12 years had endured much under many doctors. She had spent everything she had and was not helped at all. On the contrary, she actually became worse. Having heard about Jesus, she came behind him in the crowd and touched his robe, for she said, if I can touch the robe, I will be made well. Verse 29 says, instantly her flow of blood ceased, and she sensed in her body that she was cured of her afflictions. And once Jesus realized, verse 30 says, in himself, that power had gone out from him, he turned around in the crowd and said, who touched my robes? The disciples said to him, you see the crowd pressing against you, and you say, who touched me? So he was looking around to see who had done this. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came with fear, trembling, fell down before him, and told the whole truth. Verse 34, daughter, he said to her, Your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be free from your affliction. This was a desperate girl. We might say she had a never-ending time of the month. That was her deal. She had a never-ending time of the month. For 12 years, she had been going to the doctor. She didn't have no Blue Cross Blue Shield. She didn't have no health care plan. There was no Medicare, Medicaid. Everything was an out-of-pocket expense. And it says after 12 years, she had spent it all and had no relief, no cure. And in the culture of her day, she was considered unclean, was not supposed to be out in public or around people. And we say, boy, that's a little bit archaic, isn't it? You know, a patriarchal kind of a culture, and yet we did the same thing during COVID, right? But her desperation actually drove her to violate the law and the crowd of people just to touch Jesus. You can read this story in Matthew, the 9th chapter. You can read it in Luke, the 8th chapter. Each has a little bit more information in the story. As you read the story, you become aware that she probably actually got down on her hands and her knees to give her a path through the crowd, the press, saying to herself, if I can just touch the hem of his garment, she would have been, of course, forbidden by law. There would have been consequences. She would have been discouraged by family and friends to even try or attempt anything like that. But she was desperate. There's a lot to learn from that story, really. A lot to learn. Another story. Let's go to Mark, the 10th chapter, and let's read verses 46 through 52. Mark 10, 46 through 52. So Jesus and the disciples, they're traveling. It says they came in verse 46 of that 10th chapter of Mark. It says they came to Jericho. And as he was leaving Jericho with the disciples and a large crowd, Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus, a blind beggar, was sitting by the road. And when he heard that it was Jesus the Nazarene, he began to cry out, Son of David, Jesus, have mercy on me. And many people told him, keep quiet, shut up. But he was crying out all the more. All that happened when they said that to him was, it caused him to cry out more. And so he said, have mercy on me, Son of David. Verse 40 says, Jesus stopped. I mean, Jesus stopped in this moment in time. Creator of the universe. He stops. God made flesh. He stops at the cry of a blind beggar. And he said, call him. So they called the blind man and said to him, have courage, get up. He's calling for you. And what did he do? It says he threw off his coat. Man, that's an act of desperation in itself. He threw off his coat, he jumped up, and he came to Jesus. Then Jesus answered him in verse 51, what do you want me to do for you? And he says, Rabboni, teacher, master. I want to see. Verse 52 says, go your way, Jesus told him. Your faith has healed you. Immediately he could see and began to follow him on the road. I want to bring up something really quick before we continue with the story. It says in both with this lady that had the never-ending time of the month and with Bartimaeus who was blind, that Jesus says to them, according to your faith, you know. Well, you have to take and think about this for a moment, because in our mind's eye, it's Romans 10:17, faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word. And we've talked about this. If I just take and read the book enough, if I have the post-it notes all over, if I rehearse, their faith was not their faith. Their faith was actually in him. That's where their faith was at. They had heard that people were getting healed. It wasn't that they'd had, I mean, the New Testament wasn't even written. Come on. You know what I mean? They had none of the things that we quote. That we have the post-it notes. They had just simply heard. I mean, what did they hear? Well, they heard that the lame walked. They heard the blind saw. They heard the deaf hear. It wasn't the lady with the issue of blood, her faith in herself, or she simply believed. It was her faith in Jesus. She had heard. Blind Bartimaeus, it wasn't faith in blind Bartimaeus. It was faith in what he had heard about Jesus. Jesus, thou Son of David, have mercy upon me. What do you want? I am desperate. I want to see. See, my life as an adult, he would have said, has been relegated to poverty. I'm the beggar. I get what people throw away or simply are willing to part with in the moment. I'm the guy with the sign down there by Walmart with the cup. I don't have that job out there, you know, making so much an hour with all of the benefits that go with it. I'm desperate to see. It will change my life. Mark 5, go back to Mark 5. We're going to read 22 and 23. Here's another story for us. Mark 5. The story right above the lady with the issue of blood. In verse 22 of Mark 5, it says, one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet, and he kept begging him, my little daughter is at death's door. Come, lay your hands on her so she can get well and live. And then the first part of 24 says, so Jesus went with him. The Bible says he was a synagogue ruler. In that moment, for a synagogue ruler to be seen with Jesus and falling at his feet would have been political suicide in his day. Huh? The synagogues and religious leaders were quite hostile to Jesus. That was the absolute fact. That's the truth. Read the word. They were quite hostile. So for him to come and fall at Jesus' feet, I mean, he just committed political suicide. But he was desperate. He was willing to throw himself down at the feet of Jesus because death was standing at the door of the daughter that he loved so very much. And death had put its nasty vice-like grip on that girl Probably he had seen Jesus heal. He'd seen some of the earlier miracles. He'd seen them perform even in the synagogue. His faith would have been not his faith, but faith in what he had witnessed and saw. The lame walk, the blind see, the deaf hear. The dead are actually raised. My faith is in Jesus in this dire situation that I am in. Time was of the essence. In fact, in this story, there's the lady with the never-ending time of the month, and Jesus has this interaction with her. Read with me verse 36 of this, or 35 of this same chapter, chapter 5 of Mark. Talking about Jesus, and it says, while he was still speaking in verse 35 of chapter 5 of Mark, people came from the synagogue's leader's house, and they said to him, Jairus, your daughter's dead. Time was of the essence. What he had wanted was the 911 call. What he had actually wanted was, the siren sounding, the lights blazing, the traffic pulled to the side of the road. And so they say to him, why bother the teacher anymore? Jesus, read verse 36, it's beautiful. But when Jesus overheard the conversation, he told the synagogue leader, don't be afraid, only believe. And the end of the story is the dead girl actually is brought back to life. A desperate father, desperate for his child. Another story, familiar story. Let's go to Luke, the 15th chapter. Verses 11 through 32. Familiar story. But there's a desperate situation that's going to happen in this story. And no, it doesn't have to do with healing. It has to do with kind of some of the very same thing that you and we struggle with on a day-to-day basis when it comes to putting groceries on the table, when it comes to paying the rent, when it comes to making the car payment, and all the other just ordinary, everyday logistics of life. And so it says, a man had two sons, and the younger of them said to the father, Father, give me the share of the estate I have coming to me. So he distributed the assets to them. This is chapter 15 of Luke. Verse 13 says, not many days later, the younger son gathered together all he had. He traveled to a distant country where he squandered his estate in foolish living. And after he had spent everything, a severe famine struck the country, and he had nothing. Verse 15 says, then he went to work for one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his field to feed pigs. And he longed to eat, to fill his fill from the carob pods the pigs were eating. But no one would give him anything. Can you say no one? No one. No one would give him anything. You ever have a lot of closed doors? Huh? We've all had a lot of closed doors at times. We're in our desperation. We're trying to push through. We need a breakthrough. We need a miracle, right? But no one would give him any. When he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired hands have more than enough food? Here I am dying of hunger. I'll get up and go to my father, and I'll say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven, and in your sight I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired hands." So he got up and he went to his father. But when the son was still a long way off, the father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran, he threw his arms around him and kissed him. And the son said to him, "Father, I have sinned against heaven, and in your sight I am no longer worthy to be called your son." Verse 22, but the father told his slaves, "Quick, bring the best robe, put it on him, put a ring on his finger, sandals on his feet. Then bring the fatted calf and slaughter it, and let us celebrate with a feast. Because this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." So they begin to celebrate. Now, the older son was in the field, and as he came near the house, he heard the music and the dancing. So he summoned one of the servants and asked him what these things meant. "Your brother's here," he told him, "and your father has slaughtered the fatted calf because he has him back safe and sound." Then he became angry and he didn't want to go in. So his father came out and pleaded with him. But he replied to his father, "Look, I have been slaving many years for you, and I have never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came and who has devoured your assets with prostitutes, you slaughtered the fatted calf for him." Verse 31, "Son," he said to him, "you're always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and he's alive again. He was lost and is found." Desperation brought change, didn't it? Yeah. Up to that point, he was full of me, myself, and I. He's full of himself, wasn't he? I mean, as you read the story, it's like, I got life figured out. I got my cash. This is what I'm going to do. I don't think he necessarily squandered it on girls from the Red Lighthouse. That was his brother's spin on things. I believe he did like just a lot of folks would do. Man, he was having himself, I've watched people get their income tax, back, and all of a sudden they're not in church for a few weeks. Man, they're down in Colorado and they are on a massive spending spree, you know what I mean? And then 30 days later they can't even afford to buy diapers for the baby. But man, they had a great time. They got a new flat screen TV and the list goes on, you know what I mean? And I think that was him. He had himself a major spending spree. He spent it all on the things of the world until the world actually took everything from him, which happens in each one of our lives if we are foolish enough to do the same thing. And so to get enough groceries just to keep body and soul together, he's dining on the same groceries that the hogs are eating. I know Kathy gets leftover stuff, stale bread and, wore out lettuce and whatever, and you feed it to the pigs. You just see that guy out there digging through it, trying to keep body and soul together. And then he had an epiphany, back at home it's 3 hots, man. They have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's like I'd have a nice dry roof over my head, clean sheets to sleep in, It's like I could sit out on the front porch with Dad in the cool of the day. It's like we might go down to the little trout stream and catch us a fish or two. I'm going home. But that didn't happen till he was desperate. kind of interesting. This story is about a type of our Heavenly Father. That's what it's like. The story is really about you and I, huh? It's a story about us. It's a story about our journey. And we wake up one morning and we realize, kind of like that song, if ever there were dreams that were lofty and noble, they were my dreams from the start. The hopes for life's best was the hopes that I'd harbored deep in my heart, but my castles all crumbled, my fortune turned to loss, so I wrapped them all up in the rags of my life, laid them at the cross. And then it says something beautiful, something good, all my confusion he understood. All I had to offer him was brokenness and strife, but he made something beautiful out of my life. And so God allows the desperation in our life. And it's not going to do you no good to pray against it. I'm telling you, not in a million years. You can pray till you're blue in the face. You can have everybody here in this church praying with you till they're blue in the face. God will bring you to a place of desperation till you finally acknowledge, I need to do life your way. And in that moment, there's the turnaround. In that moment, there is the change. And so God allows those moments of desperation. So these stories that we've shared with you today, the story of the woman with the never-ending time of the month, the story of Jairus' daughter, the story of blind Bartimaeus, the story of the prodigal son, they all had to make a decision. They all had to reach a place of desperation. And in that place of desperation, God would step into their world. So I ask you today, you've heard the stories. Are you really desperate? Our idea of desperate, I don't think we really even understand desperate sometimes in this country. Not really. We may have had some hard times, but I mean really desperate. Part of why mostly people don't have time for God in their life, in the culture in which we live. Or so many other things take precedent over their relationship with God. They're not really desperate. And if we do have those moments, well, there's always mom and dad, there's always brother or sister, there's always R&B, the bank down on the corner, you know. There's always a line of credit, and you know, I can get me a new credit card. I think of some of these countries, there's always, you know, the little clinics, there's always Carbon County Memorial Hospital or Laramie. I think of some of these countries where you see great miracles take place. And the miracles often take place where people don't have all the things that we were just talking about. There is no city market down on the corner. There is no bank with a line of credit for you. There is no Medicare, Medicaid. There is no subsidized housing. There is no LEAP to pay your utilities. And so there is no pharmacy. There is no doctor. And so they have to, in their desperation, say, Jesus, thou son of David, have mercy on me. I have heard about you. I have heard that you meet the needs of those that are desperate. I have heard that you touch the bodies of those that are sick and diseased. Jesus, thou son of David, what do you need? I need to see. I've spent all my money on the doctor. I have no relief. My daughter's already died. I needed the 911. I needed the ambulance. I need the traffic to pull over. I needed the sirens. I needed something to eat. I wish that we as a people would make God a priority in our life. We'd be that desperate, we'd make God a priority in our life. I wish that I couldn't keep you away from church or a Bible study. I wish I couldn't do that. I wish that for you, time in God's Word was actually the priority in your day. Not an afterthought, something that you do if you might happen to have a little bit of time in the middle of all of your plans. I wish I couldn't keep you from raising your hands in praise and worship because you want to celebrate God's goodness and what He's done in your life. I wish I couldn't keep you from crying out for more of Him. Oh God, more of you. More of you, God. I wish there was such dissatisfaction in your life that you would cry out and say, oh God, we need a move of your Spirit in this hour if we're going to see our country.
Yes.
Made whole. We are such a divided people in this moment, I'm telling you. Never so much before in history. Sitting visiting with Lee this morning about it in the little coffee room. There was a day when it was a sense of community. Our Bible study this week had been about community, remember? What is a church? A church is not a denomination with a title over the door. If that is your idea of church, you're messed up. Church is actually family. It's a group of people. It's a place that God plants you.
Yes.
And in that environment, God causes you to grow and to prosper spiritually, emotionally, and physically. And you fall in love with each other, and you are so grateful. God, I thank you for where you have placed us. I wish in your desperation I could not keep you away from these altars. I wished. What is this all about? Well, something we don't use anymore, really, mostly. Just to be honest with you, there was a time altars were full. It would be a place where people would actually just get up, sometimes in the middle of a message even, and they would come to the altar, and they would come down here, and they would cry out to God. They would feel the tremendous sense of need in their life. They were desperate. And others would come so overwhelmed with gratitude and love for Him, you couldn't keep them away from here either. I've seen Sunday evening services back when they still had Sunday evening services. They would go to 1, 2 o'clock in the morning and people had to go to work. In fact, they had some really physical jobs back in the day. You couldn't get them to leave. They didn't want to leave. Nowadays, it's like, dear Lord, I'm tapping my watch. You know, the potluck is, or the roast in my crock pot. It's like the oven. It's like, Pastor, we got to get out of here. I got to be somewhere at 11 o'clock, 11:30, 12. And it's like, Matthew 5:6. Matthew 5:6 says, blessed. Can you say blessed?
Blessed.
Blessed. Highly favored. Blessed.
Blessed you're coming out and you're going in. Blessed everything you set your hand to. The head, not the tail, above and not beneath. Blessed are those that what? Hunger and thirst for righteousness. Hunger and thirst is a pretty strong motivator. God, I hunger for you. I thirst for you. God, this is what I want to see at 822 West Walnut. This is what I want to see in Rawlins, Wyoming. This is what I want to begin to witness in my workplace. This is what I want to begin to witness in my community. And I am 100% sold out, committed, on fire, not checked out in my brain. I see folks that are checked out in their brain. You know what I say to myself? They got a long, hard road yet ahead of them. A long, hard road. Until they come to the place, and God will allow it. I don't have to be a prophet to prophesy over you today. God will allow you to come to a place where you are desperate. And you remember back the word that was spoke. And you'll cry out to him. Blessed are those that hunger and thirst, because they will be what? Filled. What are you looking for in life? What do you need? So I ask you as we get ready to close, are you really serious? Are you actually desperate? Desperate people behave and act a certain way. Or are you just sort of on the fence? This is what on the fence kind of looks like. I remember, see, I was a backslidden preacher's kid at one time. I remember running around with my friends and they could party hardy all night long. And wake up in the morning and never have a guilty conscience. I could party hardy all night long, but I couldn't wake up in the morning without a guilty conscience. And I'd look at them sometimes and I think, rats. You know? Sucks to be me, you know. So have just enough of God to still be able to enjoy the world. Just enough of God to still be able to enjoy the world. And too much of the world to really have joy in the Lord and my walk and my relationship with Him. And Elmer, what will it take in your life? I could sit here for a long time and tell you what it took in my life. It was a long, hard journey. I can tell you what it took in my life. What we're talking about today is a law that God has set in the depths of the spirit of each and every one of us. God will answer the heart that cries out. God will answer the soul that asks. One last scripture. Psalms 130, verses 1 through 8, and we'll close with this. Psalms 130,
verses 1 through 8. In fact, that's the whole psalm. It's just 8 verses. Psalms 130. It says, out of the depths I call to you, Lord. Lord, listen to my voice. Let your ears be attentive to my cry for help. Lord, if you considered sins, Lord, who could stand? But with you there is forgiveness, so that you may be revered. I wait for the Lord. I wait and I put my hope in his word. I wait for the Lord more than the watchman in the morning, more than the watchman for the morning. Israel, put your hope in the Lord, for there is faithful love with the Lord, and with him is redemption in abundance. And he will redeem Israel from all its sins. Out of the depths of the heart, out of the very depths of my heart, I call to, in my desperation, I call to you, Lord. Listen to my voice. Let your ears be attentive in my cry for help. And I can see Jesus, like with blind Bartimaeus, where he just stops and he stands still. And then he says, bring him to me. I've heard the cry of his desperation. Let's stand together.